Hello and welcome to Homer for Saturday, November 15th, 2025. Today we are going to be reading from lines 155 to 168 in Book 13 of the Iliad, in which we see a great battle scene and we see a spear fly. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and let's get right into the battle. So saying, he roused the might and spirit of every man. Then among them with high heart strode Deiphobos, son of Priam, and in front of him he held his shield that was well balanced on every side, stepping toward lightly on his feet and advancing under cover of his shield. And Meriones aimed at him with his bright spear, and cast, and missed not, but struck the shield of bull's hide that was well balanced on every side, yet drove not through it. But well before that, the long spear shaft was broken in the socket. And Deiphobos held from him the shield of bull's hide, and his heart was seized with fear of the spear of battle-minded Meriones. But that warrior shrank back into the throng of his comrades, and was dreadfully angry both for the loss of victory and for the spear which he had shattered. And he set out to go along the huts and ships of the Achaeans to get a long spear that he had left in his hut. Amazing. Let's do it in the Greek. Hosei ponotruon nemenos kaitu mon hekastu. Deiphobos den toisi mega proneon nebebeke. Priamides prosten dechenas spida pantos eisen. Uofaposi probibas kaiupas spidia probibas propodis don. Meriones dautoi otitus catoduri pae noi. Kai balenua da famarte kai raspide pantos eisen. Taureien testuotitei asenala pulu prin. En kauloi agel lichon doru Deiphobos. Aspire taureien skathapo heldei sedetu moin. Angos merionau daifronos autohogervos. Absetaron eseth nosakaz de toposa tadainos. Ampoteron nikes te kayeng heos hoxunawaxe. Berdianaim paratek sias kai neias ekaion. Ui somenos torugon akrono hoi clisia filelepto. Amazing. Lots of digammas in here. Just strictly speaking from a morphological standpoint, this is a fascinating little bit because we have in line 166, Hoxune waxe is, agnumi is the breaking word, right? So it's the same word that describes the spear breaking through the leather hide of the shield, right? Which is 162. En kaoloi e wage. It's printed in the text. It is epsilon, alpha, gamma, eta. But in the actual history of the language, it is a wage. With this wa sound. So too do we have oi somenos doru macron hoi clisie filelepto, not hohoi clisie filelepto. If you ever encounter this sort of problem in Homer where you're like, why is it hohoi? Why isn't it hoi? Why don't we use the W sound? Excuse me. Well, it's because it is sort of already passed on as it goes. Fun fact, as far as performance goes, in line 158 here, we have kuofaposi probibas, so lightly, stepping forward with his feet, kai hupaspidia propodisdon, right? So hupaspidia, right? So he's underneath his shield, propodisdon, he's stepping forward. This is from, podek, right? So podiatrist, podos, hopus is the foot, and then he's easdon, so he's going forward. But I actually find it very interesting that me naturally, personally, I sort of gravitate towards the probibas form, right, which is also fairly similar to the form that's found in 156 at the end of the line. Mega proneon bebeke. Sorry about the bad sketching when I performed it the first time, but we do everything in the first take here on the Homer YouTube channel, so you guys will have to live with it. But anyway, I sort of was like, it should be propabazdon, propabizdon, something like that, moving forward, right? Propabi, I don't know, whatever the probino word for this is. That's what I was thinking of. Like that's what it should be. I think it is regularly probibondi, right? So this person moving forward, but we don't need the dative here. We want the I guess we want the propodiston instead, but you can feel how the pa lends you to do ba, not da, I feel. And evidence of this is in my flawed performance of it. I feel that this is one of the reasons why propodiston is the only time that this is used as such in the Iliad, I believe. Maybe there's like one other. I think I checked the dictionary. But it sounds and feels like a little weird, and you just like, you want to move past it, because usually it is protibas. Anyway, so that's a quick little performative note. Oh, and then there's also, as far as digammas go, aspira taureians catapoweo de sedetu moi, not apohel, apoweo. I think it's like swell or something, sawwall, it's well, I don't know. There's some complicated stuff going on here in the hawwall, right? The sort of reflexive, relative or like demonstrative pronouns, whatever it is. I don't know. Like, we'll leave that to the etymologists and the linguists. For now, we're just trying to talk about how it feels and how it performs. Mainly because we do this every day, and we don't really have time to go deep in the weeds of the formal problems. I think that as far as the storyline goes, let's get away from the performative aspect of what I have managed to do here or not do here. I really like this this line at 165. Right? So absetaron. So from the others, once again we have another one of these right? So absetaron, right? So of his own, of his comrades, es ethnos echazdetos. So to his ethnic, to his people, he goes back, and he is raging, right? Dreadfully angry. So ainos, dreadfully, sato is angry. I think it's interesting. We have other words with he going on here, right? And in our passage from yesterday, where Hector was, similarly exed, right? Let me find what these words were. Right? So he is, he recedes, right? He's receding. There are, and then also in 153, kasontai, and then here we have ko sato. I think that this is one, when you sort of go very slowly and you actually, hear it out loud, I think this is one piece of evidence that this is part of the continual passage. There's structural things about how, later on, Meriones is actually going to kill Deiphobos, right? So there's structural reasons why, the prelude here, as to the prelude of the other fights, that this is actually constitutive of the Iliad and it's not an interpolation at a later date. But I also think that the word choice and the way it feels is also indicative of this. I also think it's an interesting, statement. So from the others, he goes back to his ethnos, and he's raging a lot. One could say this describes many different political aspects of the warring person, which is, you sort of get up, you give your spear toss, right? And in this case, his spear breaks through the shield, which is made of leather, not bronze, right? It breaks through the shield, but it doesn't go all the way to the warrior, so he doesn't get victory and also doesn't get the kill, right? But he does lose his spear, and he's really mad about it. So then, tramps back off to his ships in order to get a new one. He shoots his shot, it doesn't work out. How does this compare to politicians or people in our modern day who try something, they give a spear cast, and then when it doesn't work, they go back to the ethnos, right? And what is the loaded value of a group of hetairoi that are still on the battlefield versus one that retreats into some pre-considered klisiafi, right? So back to the hut that's very far away, right? As opposed to continuing to fight and give it one's best shot. I think that this is a great thing to study, especially when you read other very more literal accounts of Greek history and fighting, such as Thucydides. I think this is a really fascinating vein, and the retreat to the ethnos is something that can be looked at quite a bit. Anyway, I think that's all I have for you today from these wonderful lines. One last thing, though, which is that Meriones supposedly marries Helen after the war is over and Menelaus dies. So good for him. But it just goes to show that, if you're jealous of a sibling, maybe you just have to go to the Trojan War, and you too might be able to marry the most beautiful woman in the world. Okay, that's not related to our question at the end of today's video, though. The question at the end of today's video is for you. What is a point where you shot your shot and you threw your spear and it made contact with where it was supposed to go? It did not miss. But at the same time, it didn't make it. Did you retreat or did you keep going? And why do you think that was a good idea or not? And when might you keep going in the future? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Homer YouTube channel. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care and have a great one. Bye.